I am the daughter of the abused novel's heroine, in this story that is already heading toward its ending. I personally witnessed my mother's death. 3 days after she died, the male lead finally showed up, and the first thing he said when he entered was, "Susie, you'd better really be dead, or I'll make you understand the consequence of not answering my calls." Yet in the room there was only a corpse lying on the bed, and me, curled up next to it. Later, in front of my mother's tombstone, he cried and laughed at me. "Gloria, your mom has died. She abandoned me. How could she be so cruel?" Chapter 1. After my mother passed away, I developed aphasia. My biological father, Peter, because of guilt, treated me very well for the next few years. He said that as long as I could open my mouth and call him Dad, he would even pluck the stars from the sky for me. But, very soon, for various reasons, he gradually lost patience with me. Peter invited my mother's younger sister to take care of me, my aunt, Pilar. Pilar was an artist under Peter's company. Since her debut, she had won awards one after another, and recently she had even become the youngest best actress in the industry. Yet she willingly cancelled all her engagements to stay in this villa to take care of a mute child. So considerate. If only she wouldn't dig her nails into me when no one was around. "You little brat. Just like your mom. You shouldn't have been born." It was another afternoon. I was drawing in my own room. Pilar came in with a glass of juice, stood to the side, and drank down the juice the maid had prepared for me. She squinted at the picture I was drawing, let out a cold laugh. "Drawing your dead mom? If you missed her that much, why didn't you die with her back then?" I completely ignored her, slowly filling in the big eyes from my memory of my mother. Just as the last stroke was about to be finished, a hand reached across from the side, forcefully snatched the paper, tearing the drawn person in half. "I'm talking to you. Are you pretending you can't hear me? Gloria, you're not just mute, you're deaf too." "Huh? Do you want me to tell your dad to take you to the hospital to check your ears?" I raised my head and stared at her. This woman was vicious in front of me, but in front of Peter, she was another person entirely. She acted gentle, caring, the perfect aunt who loved her niece, the youngest best actress, truly living up to the name. Pilar, caught by my stare, didn't know what she thought of, but her eyes filled with hatred. So she pinched me again. My waist hurt, but I didn't make a single sound. The struggle and cries of the weak only excite the abuser even more. "You little brat. You look too much like your mom." Such an eyesore. Because I gave no reaction at all, Pilar quickly lost interest. She let go of me. Just then the sound of a car came from outside. She looked out the window. Peter had come back. "Gloria." Pilar turned, her face blooming into a gentle smile. "Daddy's back. Auntie will take you downstairs to greet him." I lowered my head, gently smoothing out the half of the paper she had crumpled, piecing the two halves together. The crack still existed. Just like when someone dies, no matter how much regret or pain the living feel, she can never come back. Pilar suddenly grabbed my arm and dragged me up. "What are you doing, Gloria? Are you pretending not to hear Auntie again?" She bent down, leaned to my ear, and lowered her voice in threat. "If you don't behave, Peter won't want you anymore. You'll be thrown into an orphanage, where you won't live in such a nice house or wear such nice clothes. And those big kids there, they'll bully you, pinch you, beat you up. It'll be miserable, so you'll definitely behave, won't you?" I blankly nodded. So Pilar, satisfied, took my hand and led me out of the bedroom. When we reached the staircase, Peter had just entered the house. My eyes lit up slightly, taking advantage of Pilar's inattention. I slipped my hand from hers. A short, sharp scream came from my throat, successfully drawing Peter's attention, and so he watched with his own eyes as I rolled down the stairs, while Pilar still held out her hand. No one knew if she was about to pull me back, or had pushed me and didn't have time to withdraw. Chapter 2. When I rolled down the stairs, I protected my head, but my whole body still hurt, like my bones had fallen apart. Peter walked over quickly, the concern on his face not looking fake. "Why aren't you calling an ambulance?" He yelled at the servant, then squatted down, not daring to touch me for a moment. "Gloria, are you okay?" Footsteps slightly frantic came from the second floor. Pilar, having finally reacted, was breathing unevenly. Gloria, how could you be so careless? With one sentence she washed her hands clean. But how could I let her succeed? I looked at her with terror on my face, struggling to reach out and grab Peter's pant leg, shaking my head, mouthing silently, "No, don't pinch me, Daddy. Please save me." In my movement, the purple bruises on my waist were revealed. Peter clearly noticed. His breathing halted. He suddenly turned to look at Pilar. "You pinched her?" "It wasn't me," Pilar hastily denied. "If not you, why is she so scared of you? And you dare push her?" Pilar knew I was doing this on purpose. She almost couldn't keep the expression on her face. "Peter, listen to me. She's framing me. I didn't pinch her, and I didn't push her. You have to believe me. I just reached out because..." Her loud defense was cut off by an even louder slap. Pilar's face was knocked to one side. She covered her cheek in disbelief, feeling the flesh under her palm swell instantly. Peter's teeth gnashed with loathing. "She's only 8 years old. How could she frame you? If you're going to lie, at least think first. Do you take me for an idiot?" In Peter's arms, I closed my eyes. Before losing consciousness, I thought, right, I'm only 8. How could I possibly frame my dear aunt? Chapter 3. When I woke up. I was in the hospital. Peter was sitting on the sofa handling work. When he saw I was awake, he immediately put everything down and came over. "Gloria, how do you feel? Does it still hurt? Don't move yet. The doctor will be here soon." He looked truly concerned about me, but I only groped over my body on my own, finally finding the drawing I had hidden beforehand. The paper was already wrinkled. The person on it also crumpled. I carefully smoothed it out. "Where's the other half?" Peter's voice came from above my head. I looked up, opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Peter handed me a pen. "Gloria, when will you be willing to speak?" I lowered my head and slowly wrote the answer to the previous question on the paper, torn by aunt. Peter stared at that line, his expression darkening. "Gloria, don't worry. I won't let her bully you again." I kept my head down, unmoved. That sentence was just like the one. "Gloria, as long as you can call me Dad, I'll even pluck the stars from the sky for you. Just as fake." Right then the doctor came in. We both turned to look outside. We saw 2 uninvited guests peering in through the window. To me, they were both familiar and strange. Familiar because they were my grandparents. Strange because I had seen them only a handful of times over the years. They had never treated me as family, and they had never treated my mother as their daughter. After Peter told the doctor to check me thoroughly, he went outside alone. I didn't know what they were talking about, but faint sounds of arguing came through. When he returned, the doctor was already gone. I looked at the window. The 2 figures walked past without glancing at me. "Gloria, what are you thinking?" Peter blocked my view. Standing in front of me, I stayed silent and shrank under the blanket. The drawing paper and pen at the bedside were picked up by Peter. He stroked the words on it, praising, "Gloria's handwriting is so beautiful. It's just like your mother's." I closed my eyes. I didn't tell him that the reason it looked the same was because I often copied from my mother's diary. Before I could read, I only thought it was my mother's keepsake. After I learned to read, I realized it was a book of evidence. Each entry an accusation against the blind Peter, an accusation against Pilar who stole the nest, an accusation against the couple who just walked past the window. No regard for closeness or kinship. But, if you ask which entry impressed me the most, I would say it was the one where Pilar framed my mother for pushing her into the swimming pool. Afterward, Peter didn't listen to my mother's explanation and slapped her, almost caused her to miscarry. If she had miscarried, there would be no me. Chapter 4. At the height of her career in the entertainment industry, Pilar suddenly disappeared from the public eye. Rumors online said that the best actress had quit the industry to return home and inherit a fortune worth tens of millions. But I knew the truth. She had been blacklisted by Peter. However, for Pilar, even this wasn't much of a punishment. I sat on the sofa, fingers swiping on the tablet, brows furrowed. "Miss, it's time to eat." The maid called me. I had no choice but to turn off the tablet, jump off the sofa, and walk toward the dining room. On the way, I glanced outside the window. It was already this late, and Peter still hadn't come back. Sir said he has something to do tonight and won't be home for dinner, the maid explained. I nodded. After dinner, I went straight upstairs. Around 10 at night, Peter came back, and he brought a woman with him. I hid behind the curtain, watching as soon as they got out of the car. They clung to each other, kissing passionately, as if they couldn't wait to undress right there in the yard. Under the dim light, the woman's face became clear. My eyes widened. She looked very much like my mother. So this was what they called a stand-in lover, a substitute. My stomach churned, and I felt like throwing up. Swish! With great effort, I pulled open the curtain. I grabbed the glass of water on the bedside table and threw it down. The cup smashed against Peter's back. He cursed and looked up, and saw me. In that instant, his alcohol and lust-fogged brain snapped awake. The woman was still clinging to him like she had no bones. The next second, he shoved her off. Gloria, why aren't you asleep yet? I stared at him silently, annoyed. Peter scratched his head, then left the woman outside and came into the villa. He hurried upstairs, stopped at my door, knocked. I hid under the covers, pressing a pillow over my head. More than 10 minutes later, Peter opened the door with a spare key. He walked to the bed and tugged lightly at my pillow. Gloria, come out and breathe. Don't suffocate yourself. Feeling his touch, my stomach flipped violently. I tried hard to suppress the gagging sensation, but even after almost tearing the pillow apart, I couldn't hold it in. I pulled away from Peter, bent over the side of the bed and vomited. Peter's face turned very ugly. Chapter 5. After that night, I fell seriously ill. My brain burned in a feverish haze. I only felt myself being held in someone's arms, a broad hand gently patting my back. Gloria, Daddy was wrong. Daddy will never let you see something like that again. Everything during the fever was blurry, except that sentence. It carved itself into my mind, one word at a time. In the following years, Peter really did keep his promise, never letting those women appear before me. But if you walk by the river often enough, your shoes are bound to get wet. One weekend, while I was sunbathing in the yard, a woman appeared outside the iron gate. Long hair, white dress, strolling slowly, occasionally glancing into the yard, one hand gently resting on her belly. She had already noticed me, but said nothing. I had already seen her, but pretended not to, until the sun sank, when she completely lost her patience. Your name is Gloria, right? I'm your father's girlfriend. Hearing her voice, I took down the diary that had been covering my face. The two separated pages were a little damp. I carefully lifted one corner, holding it under the sun. The wet marks soon dried in the sunlight. The woman outside the gate forced a smile. Speaking with the tone of an elder, he often talks about you. He said you are a very sweet little girl. I quietly listened to her trying to get close. Gloria, could you open the gate for me? I have something to tell you. I stood up and walked toward her, but stopped a meter away from the gate. The woman, seeing that I had no intention of opening it, didn't push. She just gave a soft smile. Gloria, your father is still young. You understand, right? He and you both need a woman to take care of you. I like him very much, and I like you too. So, will you agree to let him remarry? My eyes fixed on her belly. The woman instinctively placed her hand over it. That abrupt movement deepened my suspicion. Are you pregnant? I typed to ask her. The woman hesitated, then nodded. Yes, it's your father's child. It's already been more than a month. Chapter 6. Peter never promised me he wouldn't keep women on the side. He only promised not to bring them in front of me. So I turned a blind eye and pretended not to know, because those women without status wouldn't affect my inheritance of the Wu family's assets. But once there's a child involved, it's different. After watching the expectant mother leave, I went back to the gazebo. In the dim light I typed one line into the search bar. What drugs can make a man lose fertility? I scanned quickly and committed the drug names to memory. Chapter 7. The next weekend, I arranged to take the woman called Carmen shopping. She agreed readily to please me. At the mall, Carmen wandered through the mother and baby store. Bored, I leaned against the shop's glass, closed my eyes, tipped my head back, and let it rest against the pane. Soon a familiar person passed by, saw me, and stopped. Gloria, you're out shopping too. Pilar walked up, wearing a crisp shirt and trousers and sunglasses, the image of a powerful career woman. You could tell how comfortable her life had been these past few years since she inherited the family fortune. I frowned and anxiously looked toward the mother and baby store. Pilar followed my line of sight and immediately saw Carmen. Her face soured. "Is that your friend?" she asked. I shook my head and typed, "She's my father's girlfriend." Pilar stared at the words on my phone as if she might chew them up. She still couldn't believe it. "What are you doing in a mother and baby store?" she snapped sharply, quickly drawing Carmen's attention. Footsteps sounded behind us and a questioning voice, "Gloria, what's going on?" I stayed silent. Pilar sneered, stepped forward, and without another word slapped her. "You bitch, you dare seduce Peter. And now you're carrying his child." "Who are you?" Carmen asked, bewildered. "Who am I?" "Peter and I grew up together. If Susie hadn't come in between, I'd be the one married to him and bearing his children. Little brat Gloria wouldn't even have been born." Carmen looked utterly confused. After all, Peter never talked about his family life with these women, and even when women argue, Peter never took it to heart. "I don't know what you're talking about. Peter and I are adults. Whatever happened was consensual. It's none of your business." Those words nearly drove Pilar mad. She'd watched Peter change women so often and often regretted losing her temper and laying hands on me. But regrets came too late. After what happened, nothing could ever go back to the way it was. Now there was a woman pregnant with Peter's child. Of course she was jealous. In the tug-of-war, Carmen clearly lost ground. I wiped the sweat from my palm, timed my chance, and rushed forward. At the same moment, Pilar shoved Carmen hard. She stumbled back into a display rack. The shelf toppled and she fell into a heap of tiny baby clothes. I stepped between the raging Pilar and Carmen, arms out like a mother hen protecting her chicks. Pilar's gaze left the clothes and landed on me. Still furious, she pointed at my nose. "Gloria Wu, when you were still in your mother's womb, I should have killed you." I stared at her coldly. Pilar was almost a head taller than me, looking down with a sneer. The skin at the corner of her eye twitched with anger. "You want her to be your stepmother so badly? Don't you think, if she has a son, will there still be a place for you in the Wu family? Your mother was the one who had the most to say about this. But she wasn't afraid of being kicked out of the Wu family back then." My hand shook on the phone as I steadied myself to message Peter. Pilar slapped it from my grasp. The phone flew across the floor and slid far away. At that moment, the woman in the pile of clothes suddenly clutched her belly and cried out in panic. She shouted to me, "Gloria, I'm bleeding." Chapter 8. Carmen lost the baby. When Peter received the news, he rushed over, seeing me in the hallway. His surprise was no less than when he learned Carmen was pregnant and had miscarried. "Gloria, why are you here?" I told him what had happened at the mall. Peter stayed silent for a long time, his eyes turning scrutinizing. "Why were you shopping with her?" I wrote, "Last weekend. She came to me and said she wanted to be my stepmother. I thought Daddy really did need someone to take care of him after all these years. So I wanted to spend more time with her to see if I could accept it. I'm sorry. I didn't know this would happen." I lowered my head, tears sliding down my face and dripping to the floor, leaving dark spots. A moment later, Peter sighed. He cupped my face, making me lift my head. He wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes and said gently, "Don't cry. I'm not blaming you. And even if Daddy had known she was pregnant, he would have made her end the pregnancy anyway." My eyes widened. "In my whole life, having you as my daughter is enough." After comforting me for a while, Peter went into the hospital room alone. Later he would give Carmen a sum of money to disappear completely from his world. Watching his back, I unconsciously showed a mocking smile. Peter suddenly stopped and turned to look at me. I froze, then typed, "After all, she carried your child. You'll give her more compensation, won't you?" Peter smiled and nodded. "Of course." Chapter 9. At night, I brought Peter, who was working in his study, a glass of milk. "Dad, For the sake of your health, you should go to bed earlier. Peter chuckled. What's this? You think Daddy's getting old? I looked at him helplessly. Don't worry. Your dad's still in good shape. He patted my shoulder and handed the empty glass back to me. Gloria, you go to bed early too. I left the room. The glass cup in my hand still seemed to carry the warmth of Peter's palm. I lifted the cup to the light. The milk clinging to the inner wall was slowly sliding down. That sight reminded me, when my mother took the pills and killed herself, she'd left a half glass of milk on the bedside table. Little me had curled up in my mother's cold embrace, watching the half glass of milk spoil, mold, and turn black, just like my life. Mom, I miss you so much. I placed the glass cup over my chest, whispering softly with longing. Chapter 10. Every night after that, I prepared a glass of milk for Peter. It lasted all the way until I graduated from high school and went abroad to study. During the summer vacation of my sophomore year, I returned home and found that soon I would have a little brother, or a little sister. Pilar's belly was already big. She had moved back into the villa. Knowing the date of my return, she stood smiling at the door to welcome me. Gloria, long time no see. How have you been overseas? I signaled the driver to stop, rolled down the car window, and stared at her belly. Pilar stroked her pregnant stomach, the fine lines at the corners of her eyes soft with maternal gentleness. 6 months already. Aren't you happy? Gloria, you'll soon have a little brother. I pulled at the corner of my lips indifferently, counting back. Pilar had conceived around the new year, most likely at my grandfather's birthday banquet. Although over the years, for various reasons, the Wu and Lin families had gradually grown distant, Peter still had to attend the old man's invitation. After attending, he simply didn't come home that night. I had guessed something might happen, but I didn't care. I typed, if my cousin is born, of course I'll be happy. My aunt's child. What else would it be but a cousin? Pilar stared at that line, let out a cold laugh. Wrong, Gloria. He's your real brother. Your father's real son. I lowered my head, as if unable to accept this reality. Pilar still wanted to say more. I directly rolled up the window and told the driver to leave, go to Wu Group. Chapter 11. Peter was not at all surprised at my arrival. He lifted his eyelids, his gaze leaving the file to land on me. Sit and rest for a bit. Wait until I'm finished. I sat on the guest sofa. After about half an hour, Peter finally rose from his chair. He walked toward me, loosening his tie. You've been home already? Seen your aunt? My aunt? Should I be calling her mom now? Peter sat down, sinking into the deep leather sofa, crossing one leg over the other. He said coolly, no need. She won't enter the Wu family. I stared at him. Peter smiled slightly, his tone that of an elder, calm and measured. That was an accident. That day at the birthday banquet, he had drunk too much. When he opened his eyes the next day, Pilar was lying naked beside him. Whether it was drunken recklessness or a setup, the other party was still the young lady of the Lin family, and the younger sister of his late wife. It was not something he could make a public scene about, or both families would be shamed. So Peter didn't investigate deeply. What had happened, but he hadn't expected Pilar to get pregnant, nor her to insist so strongly on keeping the child. You said I would never have a younger brother or sister. Peter looked helpless but offered a lofty excuse. Gloria, this is Daddy's fault, but you've always refused to speak. How can I feel at ease handing the company over to you? My fingers gripping the phone turned white. After a long silence, I gave a bitter smile, put my phone away, and suddenly spoke. So, if I start talking, will you make Pilar get rid of the baby? Peter's eyes widened slightly. Gloria, you can already talk? Why have you been lying to Daddy all this time? I looked into those eyes. All my life, I'd heard people say how much I looked like my deceased mother, but only those eyes were like Peter's, almost carved from the same mold. Maybe because I don't want to call you Dad. Because it feels disgusting. Gloria! Peter shot to his feet. A father hearing such words from his daughter would be hurt, would be angry. All the more because he believed he had never mistreated me since I was small. And I also knew from my mother's diary that Peter hated lies more than anything. I had deceived him for so many years with my feigned muteness, So his anger should outweigh his grief? I couldn't read the answer on the face of this old fox. He quickly calmed himself, pinching the bridge of his nose, saying helplessly, "Has Daddy not been good enough to you all these years?" I answered with something else entirely. "My mom gave birth to me. You treated her badly. You all treated her badly. That's why she lost the will to live. That's why I lost my mother." Peter lowered the hand from his forehead, his eyelids drooping as he looked at me, his gaze complicated. "I never realized you held such deep resentment toward me. Shouldn't I?" I stood up. Even in high heels, I still couldn't meet Peter at eye level, and had to lift my chin slightly. "At the Lin family's banquet, you and Pilar got together. Doesn't that method feel familiar? That's how Mom ended up with you too, and then I was born. Except for the people involved, the process and the result were exactly the same. For Mom, you and the Lin family only blamed her, dragged everything into the open, and branded her as the scheming woman who stole her sister's fiancé the very moment she had just been acknowledged by the Lin family, when in fact, that so-called sister had no blood relation to her at all, and the fiancé originally should have been hers. Now that the same thing has happened to Pilar, all of you are bending over backward to keep it a secret. Are you worried about shaming the two families? Or are you just afraid of Pilar facing condemnation? You know the answer." I jabbed hard at Peter's chest. Suddenly, my wrist was seized. Peter frowned. "Where did you hear all this? Did Susie tell you herself?" I yanked my hand back with force. "Did she also tell you that she was the one who called the media back then, exposing everything to the public?" Hearing him say that, a rush of blood surged up in me. On impulse, I grabbed the teacup the assistant had placed for me and hurled it at Peter's head. "You're blind and heartless." Peter swatted the cup away. But the cooled tea still splashed on him. The sticky dampness of the fabric clinging to his skin irritated his senses. Peter clenched his teeth and swung his hand, slapping me hard. The sheer force knocked me onto the sofa. "Is this the way you talk to your father?" Most of my vision was veiled by my disheveled hair. My sight darkened. Even ringing filled my ears. A hand brushed the strands aside. Peter leaned down, closing in, gripping my chin and forcing me to look at him. After a long moment, his gaze softened slightly. He sighed. "Those were grudges between adults. After your mother died, they were over. You're just a child. Digging into that, what's the point?" The words were like a knife, stabbing into my eardrums, twisting in my brain. I shoved his hand away with all my strength, staggering to my feet. After only a few steps, my heel gave way and I twisted my ankle. "Gloria!" I avoided the arm reaching for me, bent down to pull off my shoes, and limped barefoot toward the door. At the office door, I paused for a moment. Back to him, my voice hoarse. Mom had only just returned to the Lin family. Where would she have found the power to contact the media, let alone arrange for them to get into the banquet hall? You never thought of that? No, you just didn't care about the truth, and didn't care whether she was wronged. So what right do you have to repent at her grave? Chapter 12. I told the driver to take me to a hotel, but after he took a call, he decided on his own to drive me to the hospital. I knew it was Peter's arrangement. Still, I accepted it. Peter had been furious. That slap had been delivered with tremendous force. I suspected I'd suffered a concussion. The doctor who treated me was an acquaintance. After examining me, he asked, "Peter hit you?" I answered. Neither of us said much after that. Once he dressed my wounds, the doctor warned, "Rest well these days. Try not to jolt your head. If anything comes up, contact me immediately." He tossed used cotton swabs into the trash and, tidying the cluttered desk, said, "I've prepared what you asked for. I'll bring it to you in a bit. But you should leave the country as soon as possible. Pilar's move is a desperate, last-ditch gamble. She's been running the wrong way these past years. The Lin family needs Peter's investment. The child in her womb is their bargaining chip. Once that chip is gone, they'll remember this. They'll bear a grudge against you." I thanked him seriously and left. I didn't bother with the driver waiting downstairs. I hailed a taxi to the hotel. I stayed holed up in the hotel for the next few days, until the weekend, when a message popped up on my phone about Peter. He'd gone to a club he often frequented. I put my phone away, grabbed the things I'd already packed, and left. Not long after, A company director who was due at Peter's meeting was stopped outside the club by a small child. The kid had a lollipop in his mouth and handed over an envelope. "A big brother told me to give this to you. Please give it to Chairman Wu." The man, envelope in hand, had someone watch the child and, half incredulous, went into the club. Soon, orders came and the child was brought inside. "That little mistress of Pilar's has been found by Peter." When I received that message, I was already at the airport. My flight took off in half an hour. Even if Peter and the Lin family suspected me, I was already on the plane out of the country. What was in the envelope? Of course, a paternity test. After drinking cup after cup of milk, Peter long ago could not father children. How could the baby in Pilar's womb possibly be my real brother? At most, a cousin, but I would never acknowledge even a cousin like that. Chapter 13. Peter said he hates being deceived the most. He especially hates being deceived by me. That was a line I found in my mother's diary. She was deeply saddened by it. I, however, thought of using it as a borrowed blade. When the plane landed, it was already midday the next day back home. Everything had settled. The contract between the Wu and Lin families was torn up unilaterally. Unless Pilar Lin could somehow marry another Peter Wu, there was no way back to prominence. Unfortunately for her, she was forced into an induced abortion and nearly lost her life. Even the young boyfriend she just started seeing in sophomore year had to abandon his studies and quietly leave the city to return home. After hearing all this, even I couldn't help but remark inwardly, Peter is indeed ruthless. Chapter 14. 2 days later, the ruthless man came abroad to find me. I was sitting in a courtyard bathed in sunlight, waiting and waiting, until instead of him, news of Peter's car accident arrived. They said that after leaving the airport, on the road he had to take to reach me, he collided with a runaway truck. The impact was so massive that the top-spec Maybach twisted and crumpled on the spot, along with the person inside, who was mangled like a pretzel. But because the rescue was timely, Peter was still clinging to a single breath when he reached the hospital. By the time I arrived, he was in the operating room. Half a day later, he was still in surgery. Peter's assistant, after getting the news, had contacted experts from all over the world. People streamed back and forth in front of me, but Peter still hadn't escaped danger. The assistant, rushing over, called to me, "Miss Wu, please come with me for a moment." I moved my stiff neck and lifted my head, showing a pair of red and swollen eyes. The assistant froze, then quickly realized, "Please, come with me." I stood up and followed him. Chairman Wu's condition is actually very bad. He hesitated, looking at me several times, seeming reluctant. But some things have to be said even if you don't want to. With the chairman of the company in trouble, and me as the sole heir to all of Peter's assets, I had to step out to stabilize the situation. "Miss Wu, although I've tried my best to keep Chairman Wu's accident under wraps, somehow the news has still leaked. This morning at the market open, the company's stock price fell sharply. If nothing changes, it will continue to fall. Tomorrow the company will hold an emergency board meeting. I hope you can attend. Only you can help Chairman Wu hold the company together." Chapter 15. I majored in finance at university and had always kept excellent grades. In truth, it was all preparation for this very moment. But theory and practice are not the same thing. During the first month of taking over the company, I was swamped and overwhelmed. Only after that did things slowly improve. Another half year passed, and the now officially diagnosed vegetative Peter was transferred from the overseas hospital back home. Amid my busyness, I found time to visit him in the hospital. The once magnetic, middle-aged man was now thin and dry, lying on a hospital bed sustained by tubes and expensive machines. I wondered if he had ever imagined his old age would be like this. I sat by the bed, slowly eating the fruit I had brought. After finishing all of it, I pulled a tissue to wipe the juice from my fingertips. Then from my bag, I took out a diary and smiled. "Let me read you Mom's diary. That way, you'll know why I've wished for you to die." Chapter 16. Another year passed. Old Master Lin's birthday banquet arrived on schedule. He sent an invitation to the Wu family again, but this time the invite was not for Peter, who lay on a hospital bed, but for me. I opened the gilded invitation, glanced at it, and casually tossed it into the trash. The Lin household was now an air castle whose foundation had long been eaten away by worms. They'd been running around looking for investors, but as long as I didn't nod, no one would reach out to help them. After hitting wall after wall, the elder couple finally lowered themselves to bow to a junior that always ignored me. Not so fast. I pushed the matter out of my mind. On the day of the banquet, the Lins waited and waited, but I didn't show. The next day the elderly couple came to the Wu residence hand in hand to find me. They were turned away at the door. The pretty receptionist smiled politely. "Sorry, we can't see Chairman Wu without an appointment." The old man's face twitched. "I am her grandfather." The receptionist kept smiling and stuck to the same line. The two who'd always held high positions looked embarrassed. "She's exactly like her mother. We shouldn't have acknowledged her back then." Their voices were full of resentment. But there was nothing to be done. They left. The receptionist promptly reported their words to my assistant. My assistant immediately relayed it to me, curiosity in her eyes. "Chairman, are they really your grandparents?" "Me, only in blood relation." After my mother was acknowledged by the Lin family, she didn't call them mom and dad much, and I have never called them grandparents even if I did. They wouldn't respond. Chapter 17. After several rejections, Pilar approached me of her own accord. She said the elderly couple were, after all, my grandparents. "Gloria, how you treat them, if word gets out. What will people think? The Wu family has only just stabilized. Do you want to stir up trouble again?" I watched her pale face through the iron gate. This once careful, well-preserved best actress seemed to have aged a decade after the string of events. "Recovered from your health issues? Too bad my little cousin, after 6 months, still hasn't seen the world." I had struck a nerve. Pilar screamed. "Gloria, aren't you afraid of retribution?" I looked at her coldly as she raged. Only long after did she calm down and wipe at the smeared eyeliner. "For the sake of the elderly, I hope you'll step in and help the Lins through this crisis. I can transfer all the shares I hold to you. Consider it returning the shares that should have belonged to Susie." "Ha!" I laughed out loud. "Why would I let you hand them to me?" Originally I planned to wait until I was firmly seated as chairman of Wu before making my move on the Lin family. But they kept rushing at me, eager to be noticed. Chapter 18. On the day the Lin family went bankrupt, the old man couldn't withstand the blow and was hospitalized. Pilar Lin nearly went mad and completely disappeared. For the first time ever, I didn't work overtime at the company. I drove myself to the hospital. After pulling the tubes from Peter's body, I helped him into a wheelchair. I pushed him to the cemetery, because I'd come year after year. I easily navigated the twists and turns until we stopped at my mother's tombstone. I take back what I said. I carefully smoothed Peter's hair as his eyes stayed closed. "You'd better repent at her grave and ask for her forgiveness. Otherwise you'll never be free in this lifetime." My hands paused as I stared at the corner of Peter's eye. So he had heard my words. A tear slid from the corner of his eye, down his gaunt cheek to his chin, and finally dropped. I stared blankly as the tear spread a dark stain on the blanket. A little dazed, I sat down beside my mother's tombstone, leaning against the cold hard stone, just like back then, when I curled up in my mother's lifeless embrace. Story 2. Shocking! The scandal of the actress and the movie star's affair exposed. The judge wants to sentence me to death, because this is a world with zero tolerance for cheating. My husband has joined forces with entertainment big shots to send me to court. If I'm successfully convicted of cheating, I will be executed in public. If they fail, not a single person here will escape unscathed. Chapter 1. I am a typical resource-backed star, with a powerful family influence. From the moment I debuted, I drew a lot of attention. After marrying Victor, my career took a nosedive, and I returned home every day to nothing but coal pots and iron bowls. I had long since faded from the public eye, while his career flourished, with rising paychecks. His fans almost tore me apart with their insults. But Victor had no real acting skills. He only succeeded because of his good looks, his skill at charming fans, and the resources I provided him. He gained a prominent position in the industry. Whenever he came home, he would throw his bag on the floor and say, "I'm so tired today. Make me a bowl of fish soup." In everyone's eyes, he was a successful man, handsome, wealthy, gentle, and considerate, the breadwinner of the family. I was at home every day, living off of him without contributing anything to his fans. I was the leech tying down their national heartthrob. I silently endured it all and continued to stay by his side as his loyal, submissive simp. Not a penny of his money was ever spent on me. I once tested him, and he frowned, yelling, "Why should you be concerned about a man's money? Just be a good housewife at home, okay?" I swallowed my emotions, until one day, I went to my agency to discuss my comeback. In the lounge attached to my office, I saw a lace nightgown hanging off the corner of the bed. It was a size too big, obviously not mine. I put it back where it was, unable to hold back the tears that came. Just then, I received a message from Victor. "I'll come home to be with you tomorrow afternoon." Every year on Valentine's Day, in order to maintain the role of a good husband, he would come home to be with me no matter what work he had. I picked up my phone and replied, "Don't come home. Meet me at my office instead." Okay. The next day, I went to the office with a restless heart. I deliberately arrived an hour late, because last night, while Victor was asleep, I used his phone to send a message to an unnamed woman. "Come to the company tomorrow afternoon. Same spot." She replied instantly, "You're finally willing to spend Valentine's Day with me." Now, standing at the bottom of the building, my body was trembling, tears welling in my eyes. Who could she be? If it was someone famous, what would I do? Wearing a hat and mask, I walked into the elevator, my mind racing with the scene I was about to face. Was it going to be a fight, or would I catch them in the act? The closer I got, the faster my heart pounded. I took out my key, ready to burst in at any second. No matter what scene awaited me, the door opened. I opened my eyes and saw a group of people in uniforms. They took out their IDs. Their faces serious. "Miss Luna, your husband has reported you for infidelity. We need you to come with us." Chapter 2. I was escorted to the courtroom, where the judge sat directly in front of me. Victor was already waiting on the side, with a girl next to him. It was Sandra, the award-winning actress known throughout the industry. Rumor had it she was gentle and easygoing, kind and gracious to everyone, but I always felt there was hatred in her eyes when she looked at me. Maybe it was a woman's sixth sense, but I was almost certain that the unnamed woman from Victor's phone was her. "Luna, regarding your husband's accusation of your infidelity, do you have anything to say?" The judge knocked on the table. I shook my head resolutely. "I do not admit to it." Victor frowned. "Think carefully. Since you are public figures, this trial is being broadcast live across the internet. If you confess now, your sentence may be reduced accordingly. But if the machine proves otherwise, there will be no room for regret." I still shook my head resolutely. "I do not admit to it." I knew very well the consequences of betrayal. A smile was already playing on Victor's lips. As if he was certain of his victory, Sandra stood obediently by his side, still playing the role of the good girl. In this world with zero tolerance for betrayal, if I were convicted, I would be sentenced to death. But if the other side was guilty, everything would be reversed. The internet was already buzzing with discussions. I always knew Luna was no good. I just don't get it. With a perfect husband like Victor, what could she possibly be dissatisfied with? That day, when I saw what was on his phone, my heart shattered. I had never forgotten the beauty of our first meeting. "But Victor, you forced me to this." I tilted my head toward Victor and said, "Let's begin." Chapter 3. Victor stepped up to the court, pulling a photo out from his pocket. The photo was projected onto the big screen. Everyone gasped. The woman in the photo, wearing a lace slip dress, was me. Pressed against me was a tall man in a black suit, restrained yet intense. That man was the famous movie star, Angelo. From the angle of the photo, it's clear that it was secretly taken through the crack in the door. Wait, she already seduced Victor. Now she's going after Angelo too? The great actor is always known for his composure. He definitely wouldn't get involved with Luna. Victor spoke with anguish, his eyes bloodshot, and began to tell the story behind the photo. Not long ago, as always, whenever he had some free time, he would return home to be with me. But this time, he didn't find me at home. You see, every day, I would prepare a hearty meal for him and then ask with care, "Was work tiring today?" He called my name throughout the house, but no one answered. He became anxious, worried that something had happened to me, and called my assistant. The assistant said she had something to do. Something to do? What could a housewife possibly have to do? Victor always had his doubts, fearing that his work had made me feel neglected. So he began coming home especially early every day. And each day, when I returned, I would just say coldly, "I went to see my friend." Seeing a friend until midnight? Who would believe that? But Victor, though suspicious, didn't question it further, until one day, he decided to follow me. He followed me as I left, trailing me to a tall building. He followed me up to the 8th floor, his heart filled with constant unease. He saw me enter a room where a man was sitting. The man was the actor Angelo. His pain was overwhelming, and it was then that he took that photo through the crack in the door. When he finished speaking, he closed his eyes, and 2 tears rolled down his face. Oh my God, Victor is so devoted, you wretched woman, seducing my idol and then cheating on him. Get out of the entertainment world. Someone stepped out from behind Victor. It was my assistant. I was slightly surprised. She kept her head down, as if hesitating, as if she couldn't bear it. And after a moment, she began crying loudly. "Ma'am, I don't want you to die, but you can't do something so heartless." Instantly, the discussions grew louder. She was present as Victor's witness. I let out a cold laugh. Raising my hand, "Judge, I request the use of the retracer." The judge was startled. Once the retracer is used successfully, the penalty will be doubled. Not only could you die, but your family might be implicated as well. Sandra, the supposedly gentle and kind actress, spoke up. Not only did she cheat, but now she's risking her family's safety too. I nodded calmly. I'm certain I will use it. In Victor and Sandra's eyes, a flicker of panic finally emerged. Chapter 4. I placed my hand above the retracer, and the projector began to display my memories of Victor. I told you, I just want to act again. I stood beside the wardrobe, while the man on the bed stared at me like he was catching me in the act. Buried for so many years, I had made up my mind to reclaim everything that belonged to me. Victor sneered. Stop pretending. You, someone who's been stuck at home for so long, want to act? If you admit you've cheated, maybe I'd forgive you this once. I walked up to him, looking him straight in the eye. I haven't. People watching the projector began to talk amongst themselves. What did she say? Acting? Luna wants to act? Is she calling that huffing and puffing acting? If Luna can act, then I'll call a director right now. I want an audition too. But still, our Victor is so devoted, even willing to forgive cheating. On the screen, a woman was shown leaving early and coming home late every day, even more often than Victor. A shadow followed her sneakily. Victor. From my perspective, I always knew Victor was following me. I deliberately lost him and went alone to a hotel room. For a moment, people gasped. Victor's expression turned complicated. He lowered his head, as if this was what he had expected. I remained calm. A woman's voice came from the projector. Luna, you're here? Have a seat. We'll start now. Everyone recognized this woman, Camila, the famous acting coach from the entertainment industry. I had been taking her classes for quite some time. Camila stood just out of Victor's view, hidden by the door. He didn't realize she was there. All he saw was Angelo standing next to me. That day, Camila happened to introduce Angelo to me, saying he could help me practice. Camila's demeanor was calm. Everyone knew her reputation. She was notoriously strict and cold. I can't believe I'm seeing such a gentle side of Camila. No, Luna actually has something here. Did you all forget Luna's family influence? With that background, who wouldn't be nice to her? I absolutely hate people who get by on connections. Everyone seemed to forget that Camila was a teacher at the top film academy in the country, and I happened to be one of her students. The trust one earned from her had nothing to do with my background. The moment Victor saw Camila's face on the screen, his face turned pale. The footage continued to play. Sandra's face appeared. Sandra had no resources or background. She had clawed her way up to her current position as a top actress through sheer effort and hard work. Netizens often said her features were like a painting and her gaze was as gentle as water. But now, her eyes were filled with anger. Nothing like the image everyone had of her. "Are you here to audition too?" We were standing in the hallway. The lead role for this drama was either hers or mine. She taunted me. "I advise you not to waste your time. This role has already been reserved for me." I ignored her and kept walking forward. Sure enough, when the director saw me, he just glanced at me casually. But when Sandra came in, he immediately put on a flattering expression. Sandra shot me a disdainful look. The audition scene was about an exalted princess being slandered, falling from grace, and standing outside the battle with emotional turmoil. Sandra was already known for her acting skills. As she stood there, her brows furrowed slightly, and two crystal-clear tears fell down her cheeks. Sandra is definitely the queen of acting. This performance is heartbreaking. It feels like the princess has come to life. Amazing! How could Luna possibly compete with the queen of acting? Seeing this, Sandra's eyes showed rare satisfaction. She took the stand as a witness, saying, "Everyone, don't speak ill of Luna. If she got this role, there must be a reason. I'm not worthy." With those words, the controversy erupted. What? The lead role is Luna's? Why? Just because her family is powerful? I let out a sarcastic laugh. Sandra's true colors were about to be revealed. Chapter 5. It was my turn to perform. The director didn't look at me once, just kept his head down, flipping through his booklet. Everyone in the industry knew I had considerable influence, but I had never used it to gain any personal advantage. So, to them, I was just a paper tiger, and they saw no reason to treat me well. I closed my eyes, preparing my emotions. The princess stood outside the city, watching as the place she once called home was burned to ashes. From inside the city came piercing screams now and then. She couldn't tell if they were from her family or her people. This love, hatred, helplessness, and the fire of revenge burned in her heart, as stubborn tears rolled down her cheeks. At that moment, the director, who initially had no interest, was stunned by my performance. Someone in the audience began to cry. Sandra's face turned as green as it could possibly be. Wait, why did this scene without props make me cry? Luna's acting is actually this good? Even better than the queen of acting? How can you judge acting from just this one scene? Get real, people! Our Sandra has always let her work speak for itself. What does Luna have? The footage continued to play. The door opened, and a tall, handsome man walked in. He smiled at me and said, "Director, you know who the lead actress should be now, right?" Just like that, I landed the lead role. This man was Angelo. Everyone knew Angelo to be aloof, but the smile he had just given me was as warm as the spring breeze. Victor slammed his hand on the table, his voice full of anguish. "Your Honor, he is the man my wife is having an affair with." Sandra clutched her chest, sobbing. "Luna, you have so many resources, why do you still need to seduce Angelo to steal everything that belongs to me? Rely on a man? Everything that belongs to you? What an act!" She stepped forward and took out a recording. "This is proof of Luna seducing Angelo." People gasped as the recording of me and Angelo played in the hall. "If we get caught, we won't make it out alive." Angelo let out a small sigh. "How many times do we get to live? I just want to live for what my heart desires. If you die, I'll die with you." Then I buried my face in his chest, crying. The recording ended. I clenched my fists, my palms sweating. Solid evidence. The judge looked at me with a complicated expression. "Luna, do you admit to this?" I sneered. "I request to continue using the retracer." I tilted my chin toward Sandra. "It's your turn now, big star." Chapter 6. Sandra placed her hand on the retracer, and the memories involving her began to play. It was after the director had decided I would be the lead. Sandra went to find Victor, visibly upset. Their meeting spot was very secluded, a small garden behind a hotel. "Victor, your status is actually no less than Angelo's. Can't you help me?" Sandra tugged at Victor's sleeve, her voice sounding slightly coquettish. Victor frowned, raising his hand to touch Sandra's face. "You know that Luna's influence isn't limited to just Angelo." Then he wiped Sandra's tears away with the back of his hand, saying, "There's nothing I can do." The clearly intimate footage left everyone present stunned, But there were still fans trying to defend them. They didn't do anything. How can you say Victor betrayed Luna over something so minor? Both of them worked their way up from the bottom. They must have a mutual understanding. The focus today is whether Luna betrayed him or not. Don't get it twisted. I looked at Sandra and Victor's evasive eyes and smiled. Don't worry. The best part is yet to come. Once the retracer is used, it can't be stopped. They thought they had everything under control. The memories involving Sandra continued to play. Sandra arrived at a hotel, wearing a mask and a hat, and entered a high-end room. Her gaze began to shift nervously. Inside the room, there was a man sitting. When everyone saw his face, they gasped in shock. It was the director. The footage flashed quickly, but what happened was clear as day. Everyone's eyes widened as they watched the gentle and composed queen of acting being pinned beneath the greasy middle-aged director. Sandra's image of being gentle and strong was completely destroyed. After a while, the sound from the neighboring room played. It was the recording Sandra had presented of Angelo and me, an actress using her body to get the lead role, a supposed resource girl cheating and getting recorded. It was truly scandalous. As expected, shortly after that day, Sandra found me and stood in front of me, flaunting her triumph. Luna, I told you, what isn't yours will never be yours. I shrugged. Completely agree. I'll return that statement to you. At that moment, Sandra, with her hands still on the retracer, had tears flowing down her face. Yet she still glared at me in hatred, as if she was throwing everything away. She said, if I go down, you're going down with me. But sorry, I'm doing just fine. I can't believe Sandra is like this. Luna isn't innocent either. In an instant, the hashtag Sandra and Luna get out of the entertainment industry skyrocketed to the top trend. I looked at Victor, his eyes red, his face full of disbelief. He had taken his cheating wife to court only to find out that not just his wife, but also his mistress, had betrayed him. How hilarious. The judge slammed his hand on the table. Guards, detain Luna. A group of people rushed forward, grabbing my arms. I shook off their hands, rushed to the retracer, and placed my hand on it. Your Honor, I'm not finished yet. Chapter 7. After being confirmed as the lead actress, Angelo often came to see me. He said, since we worked hard to get this role, it's necessary to rehearse together beforehand. So we often found ourselves alone in a room. But as the footage showed, aside from rehearsing, we never did anything inappropriate. One day, we arranged to meet at a high-end hotel. Angelo played the role of a soldier stationed in an enemy nation, secretly protecting the princess. That day, the general could no longer bear his longing for the princess and sneaked out. If we're discovered like this, we'll both be doomed. If you die, I'll die with you. Coincidentally, Sandra's room was right next to mine. Coincidentally, she managed to record this part. With this, I had completely proved my innocence. Throughout all our rehearsals, my acting skills were evident, and my reputation soared. Victor and Sandra looked pale. The judge sighed. This was all a misunderstanding. Everyone may leave. I raised my hand, not intending to end it there. Under everyone's watchful eyes, I turned to stare directly at Victor. Your Honor, I want to report my husband Victor for infidelity. Victor was stunned. It was obvious he never expected me to know about his affair with Sandra. Stop talking nonsense. Victor pointed at me angrily. I admit I wrongly accused you. I made a mistake. Please, stop this and come home with me, okay? Seeing him cornered like a frantic dog, I felt utterly delighted. Everyone around began discussing. How could Victor possibly cheat? I support Victor. He's always been the ideal husband in our eyes. Since that was the case, I might as well satisfy them. I tilted my head and smiled at him. All right, let's go home. Chapter 8. Sandra walked out expressionless, her entire being like a lifeless shell, or rather, as if her heart had died. As she brushed past me, I said to her, you've fought your way up to where you are now through hard work. It's truly not easy. But for someone who's always prided herself on being a top actress, you didn't notice how I deliberately amplified the volume during the recording. Sandra finally looked up, staring at me in disbelief. You followed me, she muttered. Why would anyone arrange to rehearse at a hotel? So it was deliberate on your part? I just smiled without saying a word. She charged at me like a madwoman, her hair disheveled, muttering, "Bitch, bitch." In the end, she could only be forcibly dragged away. The farce was finally over, and Victor and I returned to our image as the model couple in the public eye. Victor warmly greeted the media, this time. I wrongly accused Luna, but it made me realize how steadfast our love truly is. Sandra and the director's reputations plummeted, and all their resources were cut off. Angelo found me again and said, "The director has been replaced." I wonder, Miss Luna, are you still interested in being the lead actress? I was very interested. I knew Victor was always uneasy about me spending time with Angelo, but the more it bothered him, the closer I got to Angelo. Angelo was someone who took his work extremely seriously. Fortunately, this project was a big production, which could mean a turning point in his career. When acting with him, I easily got carried away by his performance. To avoid distractions, we often chose secluded places for rehearsals. Every day after we finished, Angelo would personally drive me home. My assistant would come downstairs to receive me. Since her failed attempt to help Victor with false testimony, the assistant's attitude towards me had become much more respectful. It was like she was scared, but there was also a hint of defiance. I handed her my bag as I walked straight ahead. "This is the bag Victor gave me a few days ago. It's yours now." Ever since marrying Victor, everyone had pointed their fingers at me, including the assistant. And it's understandable. Victor is handsome, wealthy, successful, and family-oriented. In their eyes, he was the perfect man. I quietly glanced back. The assistant was holding the bag close to her chest, as if afraid to drop it. "By the way," I said, turning back to her, "I need to go out tomorrow. Take my lace nightgown to room 306 at the XX Hotel." The next day, Angelo drove over to pick me up. He deliberately drove very slowly, and I guessed he knew what I was planning. I said to him, "If you're willing to help me finish this performance, I'll work with you long term." He gave me an ambiguous smile and agreed to my request. At an intersection, our car came to a stop. I suddenly leaned in close to him, our faces barely a few centimeters apart. The atmosphere was quiet, and we could feel each other's breath on our faces. "Once the act is over, don't forget our agreement," he murmured. I nodded. Sure enough, in the car following us, I caught a glimpse of a black watch on the driver's wrist. It was the same watch I had gifted my assistant for her birthday, the only one of its kind in the world. I patted Angelo's shoulder and said, "Let's go." The car resumed driving. Angelo's driving skills were impressive. We circled around several red lights and managed to shake off the assistant, but she knew where we were headed. We leisurely made our way to the hotel, where a crowd and the media had already gathered. The assistant was at the front. We wore masks and hats, blending in with the crowd, quietly waiting for them to open the door. The door opened, as they expected. A man was on top of a woman. In an instant, the flashlights clicked furiously. It took a while before they realized that the man was my husband, Victor. The woman beneath him was Sandra, the same woman who had testified with him just a few days ago. In no time, half-naked photos of the two spread all over the internet. Chapter 9. Oh my God. So Victor really did cheat. This is the first time I've seen a thief crying "Stop thief." How did he even have the nerve to accuse Luna in the first place? I never criticized Luna, beating 99% of the internet commenters. The assistant was stunned. Seeing this scene, I broke down and rushed out of the crowd, covering my face as I sobbed loudly. Oh my God. How could you do this to me? What did he say just a couple of days ago? Oh, right, steadfast love. Victor jumped off Sandra, whose eyes looked like she wanted to kill me. But fortunately, I had great acting skills. Right now, I was a betrayed wife, sitting on the ground, pounding the floor in agony. Victor grabbed me from the ground, his eyes red. "Are you following us again?" I didn't speak, just continued crying. Victor's eyes flickered, and he quickly turned to the cameras, trying to explain, "Actually, Luna and I have been divorced for a long time. Please don't misunderstand. I didn't cheat." I laughed coldly. "Divorce?" The judge pushed through the crowd, leading a group of uniformed officers, no matter what. All of you are coming with us for now. The three of us were taken away, and I met Angelo's eyes outside the crowd as he quietly watched the scene unfold. He gave me a smirk and a thumbs up. I took it as approval of my acting. Using divorce as an excuse, Victor, your shamelessness truly knows no bounds. Victor didn't flinch. He moved closer to me, as if he had everything under control. I've investigated every detail of your family's affairs over all these years. If you ruin me this time, the moment the judge gives the order, the hitmen will kill every member of your family. I turned my head sharply, looking shocked. After all these years, Victor had climbed to a certain height, and I, for the so-called love, gave up my career and betrayed my family. Now, I just want to make up for the past. How could I let him harm my family even a little? For the first time, I felt a huge sense of defeat facing him. My palms were sweating continuously, and his gaze pierced through me like a knife. When a person has a weakness, they are bound to lose. What he wanted from me was for me to admit that our marriage was merely in name, and that there had long been no love between us. Chapter 10. My father is the wealthiest man in the country, and my mother was an award-winning actress from the previous generation. My family has a strong cultural heritage. I grew up as a little princess, pampered and protected. With my own efforts, I got into the film academy and acted in a few movies, but I didn't manage to shine, always carrying the label of a privileged actress. When someone is accompanied by good fortune, people will desperately try to downplay all their efforts, attempting to justify it with, "She just got lucky," to numb their own mediocre lives. A few years ago, during a talent show, I met Victor. Victor came from a humble background but never stopped striving for growth. I extended an olive branch to him and said, "I can help you." If I spoke to the judges, I was certain he would win first place in that talent show. But he simply shook his head and said, "When I climb a bit higher, I'll be worthy of Luna's help." Later, through his own efforts and charisma, he gained a large following and won first place. I pursued him intensely, and we eventually got together. However, my family strongly opposed our relationship. They wanted me, while I was still young, to hone my acting skills and pursue my dreams, rather than get lost in a small, insignificant love affair. They also said that Victor wouldn't be a good person. Someone who has never experienced power changes the moment the spotlight shines on them. I was stubborn and told them, "I believe in him. I'm just doing what I want to do." Later, in a fit of anger, I left home, and my parents were deeply disappointed in me. I gave many of my family's resources to Victor and willingly became his simp. I firmly believed in the determined and unyielding look he had when we first met. But as they say, greed and indulgence corrupt people, and desires grow larger. The clinking glasses he once longed for had now become his stimulant. Looking back now, it felt like I was possessed back then, which led me to this current situation. Chapter 11. We returned to this place once again, but now, the one on trial was him. Victor's face was cold, as if he was betting on the fact that I wouldn't let my family get hurt. The judge looked serious. "Just now, you said that your marriage with Luna ended a long time ago. Is that true?" Victor spoke with righteous indignation. "Yes. I, Victor, have always obeyed the law and would never do anything illegal." I stayed silent. The judge continued. "Do you remember the statements you made to the media not long ago about your unwavering love for each other?" Victor hesitated, and for the first time, a trace of panic appeared in his eyes. "Your Honor, our focus now is whether or not we've divorced, not what I might have said before." Meanwhile, a storm was brewing online. The image I had of Victor is completely ruined. He's no longer that gentle, refined young man who bravely pursued his dreams. Victor continued to struggle. "If the judge doesn't believe me, just ask Luna directly." All eyes and cameras turned to me instantly. I struggled to hide the turmoil within me, while Victor's gaze, full of threat, bore into me from off-camera. I closed my eyes for a moment. My marriage with Victor has not ended. Even until now, the flashlights flickered continuously, and the murmurs of the crowd grew louder. Victor visibly froze. "Miss Luna, could you tell us more about your married life with Victor? What kind of person has Victor been to you all along? Has your life after marriage been happy or not? A microphone was thrust in front of me, but before I could answer, a man strolled in slowly. He slammed his hand on the table, and the entire room fell silent. Even the judge stepped aside. You just said that you and Luna are divorced. Oliver pointed at Victor and asked. But we haven't found any divorce records for you. Even if it's a marriage in name only. Didn't Luna just deny that? Oliver, my father's younger brother, my low-profile uncle, he was the highest-ranking judge, and rumor had it that he secretly ran a hitman company. Coincidentally, it happened to be the same company Victor once claimed would kill my entire family. My family's influence was vast, something Victor couldn't fully comprehend despite all these years of trying. But fortunately, when I decided to expose Victor, my family reached out to me. This time, it was the first time in my life that I relied on my family's background. The camera focused on Victor's face, which looked especially distorted. The flashlights illuminated Victor, making him appear strangely eerie. He looked nothing like the fearless young man full of drive I first met. He had nothing left to say and was taken away. As he passed by me, he whispered, "If only, back during the talent show, you hadn't chosen me, hadn't extended an olive branch. Back then," I said, "I can help you." But while some people raise their glasses and see their clear-eyed reflection, others can only get lost in the swirling liquid, unable to see the way they came. Chapter 12. Oliver sentenced Victor to death, and all marital property was awarded to me. Sandra disappeared without a trace, vanishing from the entertainment industry. Sometimes, I prayed for her, hoping she found a completely different kind of life. The assistant was found in a bathtub with deep cuts on her wrists shortly after Victor's death. Amid the spotlight, I quickly joined a new production, and the filming process went smoothly. When the show aired, I was officially nominated for Best Actress. On the day of the awards, I saw my parents in the crowd. I was interviewed by a media outlet, and the host asked me what my biggest takeaway was on this journey. I thought about it and replied, to regain my original passion. In the past, I took some wrong turns, but fortunately, I never lacked the courage to start over.